Hey, what's up, guys? So I want to do a quick video just talking about the current kind of times we're in. You know, Nobody can argue that this year has been just so crazy for just the polarization of politics where, we're seeing more and more that things are just so polarized, and it's happening every day on all of our social media feeds. We're arguing back and forth about, people are just so entrenched on, this is the way I see things, this is the way you see it. You're Democrat, you see it this way, I'm Republican, I see it this way. So they've really done a good job of just keeping us arguing about these things. And, one thing I really am finding interesting, I am in my early 30s, is that I can not only find women to date that maybe share my same values, but I can't even really be friends with women. I'm constantly arguing with women. And, at one time I actually had many women friends. Like, there was one time where my mom even actually asked me if I was gay because I had so many girlfriends. And I could just hang out and, we'd hang out and have fun and just we got along great in different like public groups, like this young professionals group. And yeah, so right now it's just crazy where like I'm constantly arguing with these women that are just like, trying to make me out to be some bad person because of my values. So, one thing I wanted to share is that look at how crazy this has become where, gender gap and party identification. So in 1994, this is saying that 42% of women were Republican and about 48% were Democrats. So, in the dating pool, you would probably have a 50, closer to 50-50 chance of meeting somebody that maybe has the same political party as you. And of course, 94 and before, it really, politics and talking about things were probably a little more taboo, right? In our parents' generation, they didn't really talk too much about politics. It was really one of those like, hey, keep that to yourself kind of things. But we all know right now, it's like I've seen countless women on their dating profiles say things like, oh, Trumpers swipe left, or, we're Republican, swipe left. And like, sometimes that'll be the first question that somebody's even asked me. I've had a woman ask me, you know, oh, you're Republican? Oh, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, really? That's going to be your. And it's funny because I think most people that are more right leaning are a little more open minded. We're kind of willing to like give somebody the benefit of the doubt. We can just say, not really a fan of that. But as long as you're not like a raging liberal and you're like hair's dyed like a peacock and like, you're super like, yo, super liberal and kind of like, where the kind of woman I'm talking about, we'll kind of make exceptions. We'll be like, all right, well, I like to get to know you first. I want to know your character rather than just like labeling you. But look at what's happened with this divide here and this separation of how things have become. This gap has widened. Like, it doesn't seem like it's widened that far, but it was close to touching here. That's a really big gap in literally 30 years, 20, 30 years, 2020 to 1994. Like, insane. So, what this is saying is that in terms of the dating pool, like men, it's still close to somewhat 50-50, which is actually surprising, but I feel like I'm kind of surprised by this. I feel like more men maybe are leaning towards Democrat, especially by millennials. I'd like to see the research on millennials or younger generations, their political leanings, because I feel like more millennials are probably leaning Republican, I think, in my friend circle at least, but that's just my own circle. But either way, this is the point I'm trying to make here. So think about the dating pool and the availability of women that are refusing to date this 38% of men, or this percent of men, because they are Democratic. And then the men that don't want to date 56% of women, and then they're left to 38%. So that's a competitive dating pool. So that's really kind of shocking. And I guarantee this is actually, in theory, like I said, greater by age for sure. Like, there's no doubt. And that's the time that we're in. Things are so polarized. And we know they're polarized because of all the bias in the media. I mean, nobody can argue that. Nobody can argue that, you know, main media corporations are extremely left leaning. And it, it's funny because it's just like totally like in these current times, you can't argue with anybody that's super leftist, because if the facts are in their favor, they're not gonna like, say you're right. They're not gonna admit that. But all the freaking main alphabet soup, CNN, Democracy Now, which is NPR. So that's funny that they list NPR as centrist, but then Democracy Now is super left leaning. Like, no, NPR is very left leaning too. Okay, MSNBC, Newsweek, Slate, Fox. You've seen all of these before. You've seen these come up. Time Magazine, ABC News, The Hill, USA Today, Wall Street Journal. These are all over your timeline. These are all over your news feed. These are the ones that get the coverage. Huffington Post. And it's really funny because the ones that lean right, these are so like almost grassroots. They're so much smaller. Besides Fox. I mean, we all know that supposedly Fox is the only one that is right leaning, but it's owned by Disney. So I truly, and I think anyone that is truly conservative or Republican knows that they view Fox with a lot of skepticism too. Like, thankfully, there's a couple good anchors, but honestly, that is getting by the day, you know, skeptical. Owned by Disney. Like, what more can you say? But look how small these other places are. Breitbart, Blaze, the Federalist. These are like New York Post. These places might have been around for some time, but they're still freaking like grassroots small potatoes compared to freaking these mega news corporations. So, we know that that's the reason for the political divide in this country. And, kind of what I wanted to get to the point of this video is like what we're seeing is that, most the dating scene, especially in America, but I'm sure this has happened. I'm sure this is freaking happening in other countries too. Like, I think that feminism in general has created a divide between the generations where it's like, you know, if you see men as the enemy, if you see the patriarchy, if you see that capitalist image of trying to keep a woman down, uh, of course you're going to feel that way. So, kind of what I want to discuss throughout this video is, you know, why we've seen such this discrepancy gap, and I think anybody can really sit back and think about the past decade, even the past 5 years, and see how Democrats are playing to this discrepancy. They're playing to, I believe that even women are more likely to vote than men. So they are playing to this hand of expecting women to vote more than men, and that they're trying to get people really rooted in that defiance. And I really personally think it comes down to population control. So, there's been all these freaking articles about, Trump attacking women's rights, threatening private abortion coverages, undermining the Affordable Care Act birth control benefits. Trump did none of those things. Eroding equal play by halting paid data collection. Like, no, he's never did any of these things. Weakening Title IX, the Title IX, which is, made freaking college campuses like just a big political correctness, swath of you needing to ask for consent, and really putting this huge freaking just Grand Canyon sized gap between men and women on college campuses, freaking destroying fraternities and sororities and Greek life, destroying college sports. So, honestly, like, this is the past 5 years, it's been riling up people on the left. They've been saying that, this is like the fight of their lives. And we all know that with the Women's March. So, we can say that the Women's March obviously was a huge defining moment in the past decade, the past 20 to 50, in the past 20 years for sure. I mean, this was this huge march on Washington, and we all remember freaking women with their little, what do you call them? P-word hats, their vagina hats that they're all wearing. I don't know. this kind of symbol here. It looks like some kind of communist. Um, sisterhood is powerful. We will fight. And this really, you know, obviously getting young girls into it. I don't want to wear glass slippers. I want to break glass ceilings. So really all of this kind of stuff that happened uh, within pizza rolls, not gender roles. Hey, Trump, women are people too. So this is all just brought on from basically Trump being elected. It really was nothing about policy at all. And really thinking that women's rights of birth control or freaking abortion are going to be taken away. And this huge narrative of being oppressed. And that's really just fueling the leftist Democratic um, guild on the party affiliation, really, because none of that really came to fruition, obviously, after these 4 years are done. Here's an article from Planned Parenthood. Trump administration wants to take away women's rights. How times is this freaking shared on social media between people? So they fight back to ensure everyone, regardless, has access to birth control. So for more than 50 years, we know that Trump's determined to flout. He's trying to buck science. Oh, we know it's all about science. We're against science supposedly nowadays. All hail the god science. Public opinion, and pursue an extreme agenda. Enough is enough. So literally they're trying to say that he's trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act. None of that happened, obviously. None of that happened. Not any of that even came close to happening. Here's another freaking, the UN Human Rights Chief warns of women's rights complacency. So to be vigilant of, well, she looks very feminine, doesn't she? Look at that hair. Oh man, that kind of looks like my 4th grade haircut in my yearbook, like a very feminine woman there. So, women's rights are threatened and attacked on many fronts, she adds, adding that there is over this period of backlash and resurgence of gender inequality narratives based on age-old discrimination. We must resist. There's that word, resist. So, yeah, that's that. And anyways, I just kind of wanted to scroll through the most defining women moments in the past decade to just show, for women in 2020 specifically. So everyone's obviously hailing Kamala Harris, even though we all know how she got her start, having an affair with a man that was 60 years old, and she was freaking, 29? And she had the audacity to go to some party in public with him, even while he was still married. Okay. She was in San Francisco. We know how San Francisco is doing these days. So, yeah, obviously this is, equal pay for Brazilian soccer players. Okay. Too bad anybody that really has a freaking clue about pay gaps in sports, professional sports such as soccer and NFL, literally understand it all comes down to advertising revenue, and it comes down to competitive play and viewership. If nobody's watching you, you're not going to get the sponsors, you're not going to get the advertising revenue, so you're not going to make as much money. I mean, that's how it goes. If you want to change the system, advocate for people to watch more women's sports. Well, if that's the case, then get more competitive. I mean, that's just funny. So literally, they've been talking about this for years with men trying to get equal pay when in the NBA and other sports when they haven't made a fraction of the advertising revenue that men bring in. And that's just common sense. That's not me being, misogynistic towards women. It's just economics. And that's what we don't talk about is economics. There's a reason for these things. So, okay, cool. This is great. We have, new kind of STEM leaders here. 15-year-old use technology to, improve some things like drinking water. That's awesome. 2020, the last decade, there was a foreign minister that was elected. Awesome. A couple Nobel Prize winners in chemistry and physics. So more kind of STEM promotion of women, even though out of all of the even out of all of the different majors and things that STEM is the only one of the only ones that they have not been outperforming men in. Everything else, they've been blowing boys and men out of the water, such as completing college degrees and educational attainment, and just boys are floundering in almost every single other subject. But that's apparently the one. So as we know, it's not about equality; it's about domination. So here's another thing over the past 15 moments in 2019. So we're just looking back. We remember the soccer team, this loud, brash, partying on the freaking float, drinking, swearing, cursing out Donald Trump, this super crazy, pink-haired, whatever her name was, making a huge spiel about, women's rights, being super rebellious and just absolutely disrespectful, just a terrible role model. We know Greta Thunberg has been one of the most popular, obviously, advocates and champions of climate change, even though she was born into tons of wealth. She apparently has private yachts and all this when she wants to rant on about, climate change and sustainability. All right, that's fine. Um, we're still talking about some more STEM kind of developments. We're talking about equal pay in sports again. We're talking about kind of other achievements related to women in the military, even though women are still not allowed to be in the draft. Okay, so I don't want this to be too disorganized, but kind of what I wanted to mention is that, and we got the squad. Of course, can't forget the squad and how this has been fueling this separation of party lines, because they're all very, very democratic. The squad, AOC, and all the other ones that are just constantly violent. We know that was such a galvanizing moment when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and obviously Democrats are praising that, and we see how they treated the new Supreme Court justice that Trump, commissioned, Amy Coney Barrett. We saw what leftists did to her. We couldn't celebrate the fact that she was a woman because she wasn't a Democratic woman. So, this is kind of just going over. They are abolishing kind of like traditional Victoria's Secret fashion shows. Kind of more of the same stuff. But what I wanted to mention specifically was, this is the trend that we're seeing. It's not going to change anymore with freaking Biden as the Democratic president right now. He's constantly going to be running on, especially with Kamala Harris, she's constantly going to be running on this narrative of women's rights are under attack. Nancy Pelosi has got the Speaker of the House for 4 more years. That's not going to be any better. And, everyone should really look up a wonderful person named Mallory Millett, okay? Mallory Millett is the sister of Kate Millett, the sister of one of the most prominent feminist. Kate Millett is a feminist activist, writer, and human rights advocate, and really a pioneering person for the feminism movement. And her sister talks at length about just how radical her sister was. So like I said, look her up. Her name is Mallory Millett, and the whole point of this video is talking about this separation that we're seeing, and it's really just a matter of population control, and where men and women can't even have conversations with each other. You can't, and you can't see eye to eye because there's no arguing that. There's no arguing whenever women are posting things like, men should be the ones getting birth control. Men should be the one on getting birth control and snipped, not women. It's an attack on women's rights to. I'm not sure if you guys seen posts like that, but I've seen plenty of those where it's like, no, I'm pretty sure there's a scientific explanation for why they've chosen to regulate the reproductive health cycle, because if they try to do that for men, it actually could be a lot more problematic. It was actually less problematic for women based on the studies. So, but anyways, don't try to use rational thought and reason. So, anyways, to kind of scan through this here, Mallory Miller just talks about the roots of these kind of feminist groups and how she started going to these kind of like groups with her sister. Her sister was the one to start them. And so after 50 years of almighty consciousness raising experiment to empower women, um, she's talking about how, the roots of this happened. Here's another article. This one's a little more better. How Marxist feminism ruined lives. The horror I witnessed inside the women's liberation movement. Socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal sharing of misery. Winston Churchill wrote, she said. So, she said she kind of talks about her history of how she grew up maybe in like some type of Catholic school where she had nuns, and they said, oh, they were disappointed that she's going to be going there because you're going to come back a communist and an atheist. Just as my sister, Kate, had 6 years before me. So she says she went to college. She said, well, she laughed about that, and she came back a communist and an atheist. So she talks about in 1969, so her sister invited her to join kind of one of these women's groups gathering. They called it a conscious raising group, and they all recited a kind of like common prayer. And they asked him, why are we here today? To make a revolution, they answered. What kind of revolution? The cultural revolution, they chanted. How do we make cultural revolution, she demanded. By destroying the American family, they answered. How do we destroy the family? By destroying the American patriarch, they cried exuberantly. And how do we destroy the American patriarch, she replied. By taking away his power. And how do we do that? By destroying monogamy. Monogamy, marriage to one person. Devotion, they shouted, how can we destroy monogamy? The answer left me dumbstruck. She said, breathless, disbelieving at my ears. Was I on planet Earth? Who were these people? By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, and homosexuality, they resounded. So this is her first-hand account of, these initial women's groups and how they had a goal to really invade the American institution, the revolution, which is invading the educational system, university, high schools, K through 12, and really every aspect of American life. And we see the fruits of that today. So Mallory Millett is really awesome, talking about how her sister was basically batshit crazy all of her life. She was really scared of her. She was always super mean to her. Just really kind of a witch of a person. So I'd recommend, going and checking out Mallory Millett and talk about the roots of what we're in now and how it really does come down to population control. We see these delayed marriage rates between men and women. Millennials are delaying marriage more than ever before. This article says only 26% of adults between the ages of 18 and 32 were married in 2013, compared to 36% in 1997 and 48% in 1980. So it's literally gone down almost 10% by decade since the 1990s. So we saw back in 1997 just how much closer that gap was between men and women. This gap here I'm talking about in 1994 between party affiliation, and now we see this major gap. And really it's so eye-opening. 10%, 48% were married in 1980, 36% in 1997, whenever there wasn't that much of a discrepancy between women who were Democratic or Republican. Now only 32% 2013, or 26%, and that's the most recent study they have is 2013. Are you kidding me? Like literally, that's 7 years ago. You don't have any more recent studies of I mean, maybe there are, um, but so far that was the top article that I seen. So I guess it's safe to say that maybe what 16%, maybe 16% of millennials are married between the ages of 18 and 32. That's really scary. I'm not married. I'm in my early 30s, so I definitely understand this. And I guess I can blame economic factors. Like, I still want to travel and do different things. So, yeah, I definitely agree that there are some economic factors. But if I came across the right woman, I'm sure I would have been married by now. I just haven't been able to find them. And we are a little more picky than other generations. But it's mostly because of these freaking crazy attitudes. Most men don't want to settle down with. And how can you even freaking have a relationship with somebody if they're just so just defiant on yes, queen, whatever you say, AOC and Kamala Harris and the patriarchy and women oppression. Like, how are you gonna date somebody that has these kind of attitudes and they see you as the enemy? Like, men are simple creatures. We're like, we don't want to argue, we don't want to fight. Yeah, I'm more than happy to take on women's roles. Like, I love to cook for women. I've constantly been cooking for women and trying to date, and hardly any of them will reciprocate. Hardly any of them will. Most women are proud to say that they don't cook. They're like, and there was a freaking rap song. What was that? That WAP song? I don't cook, I don't clean. They're proud to say that they don't reciprocate in a relationship. Well, sorry, honey, but you're not going to get married then, because any real man understands that it takes two to tango. If you want to get married, you're going to have to reciprocate. If you want to have a relationship, you got to reciprocate. If I buy you dinner and I do nice things, then you have to reciprocate. So many women nowadays just understand that they just refuse to, and they wonder why they're still single in their freaking late 30s. And it's like, that's not how relationships work. So yeah, median age of marriage has been plummeting. Um, it's been plummeting for the past years. I mean, an unprecedented portion of millennials will remain unmarried through age 40. The marriage rate might drop to 70%, a figure well below rates for boomers, 91%. So, yeah, I mean, and this is talking about the impact of not getting married. I haven't read this, but I mean, I can just think from common sense that, yeah, obviously you don't have a stronger economic base. It's single parent families are nowhere near as better off as two parent families, right? You have less economic opportunity. You don't have both parents. You definitely need both to raise a child, right? And yeah, so this is kind of the point of my article. And what do we have to blame for this? I mean, you know, every place you look, we're having a cram down our throats about celebrities like Taylor Swift who are influencing these upcoming generations. Emma Watson, okay, freaking super big role in Harry Potter, okay, um, you name it. Like, even Britney Spears. I mean, Britney Spears was of a more of a sexual promiscuity for millennial generation, but she's not really a well-known prominent feminist. But certainly Taylor Swift is. And look at this quote: "To say you are not a feminist means that you think men should have more rights and opportunity than women. So if you're not for us, you're against us. If you're not for saying that men should have more rights, then you're against us. So you should." And look at this insane freaking shit. I'd rather be a rebel than a slave, and that's what we've seen happen over the past freaking decades. They're equating marriage to slavery. I mean, that's so many feminists that we know will say marriage in things like the Bible have been used to oppress and to enslave women. It's just absolute hypocrisy and lunacy, you know. To honestly think that the Bible was meant to keep women um, as kind of objects is insane. You know, what about Jesus whenever he stands in front of the woman and he says, who is without sin, you cast the first stone. He literally stands up for the woman who is a harlot and a prostitute, and and meeting the woman at the well, and just so many stories. Like, the Bible is not meant to oppress women. It's just those are different cultural times when it was written in. And so, yeah, this is the kind of leaders we have from celebrities that are influencing these younger generations, you know, that are really just, creating these attitudes. And then, we see kind of movies, um, these, what have been some of the biggest movies in the past freaking 10, 15 years, in the last 5 years. And we see them with these really strong feminine characters that are masculine. I mean, Mad Max Fury Road, really, like, yeah, she's pretty, but not at all feminine. Like, look at this short, butched hair. We have Wonder Woman, even though she's sexy. Obviously, nobody can argue that, but she's not beautiful like the original iconic Wonder Woman. She's a lot more hardened, mad, just pissed off at the men, um, and kind of taking this aggression out. I mean, I'm sure I've never even seen it, but from what I've seen is that it's gotten horrible reviews. It's just absolutely terrible, and I feel like anymore it's become more about the message than the actual entertainment, right? It's like they're focused more on a political message than actually creating a good movie, and it's really comical. It's so comical. You actually think a girl with being this skinny could actually do this to two guys? Like, it's so funny. Hey, there's biology, right? There's there's biology at play. Like, there's a reason why, like I said, men's sports are more popular because we compete at a higher level. They're stronger. They have more physical muscle mass. Women have been, women are born to raise kids. Women are born to carry a child, right? So there's a reason why you carry your weight in your hips and your butt and your thighs more, and you have smaller shoulders and slender upper torso. You know, Men have just evolved in as stronger primates to freaking, you know, do things like hunt and gather and kill, and we're happy to do that. But you're saying you want to do those things. Well, sorry, you're not really built like that. And anyways, what I wanted to really end this with, because this is definitely like kind of a ramble, but the core concept here is like, are you guys seeing this in your circles too? Are you seeing this in your life where you can't even have a conversation with women your age, where you just can't even see eye to eye, and you're constantly arguing, and maybe you're being made out to be a terrible person because of your values, which I know I'm not a terrible person, but everyone I've been talking to, these women I get in arguments with, these girls like close to my age, they'll just say like, you're a terrible person because you feel this way, but we just have different values, okay? No, I don't think that men should be the one on birth control. No, I think that a lot of that Me Too movement, which I know it's important, was perhaps freaking character assassination. A lot of it was, that whole freaking Judge Kavanaugh hearings were absolutely ludicrous, baseless allegations from a girl I couldn't even remember a story at a party however many years ago. Like, it's just being a critical thinker. It was like, hold on a second. No, I mean, I like to take everything into consideration. Um, I want to actually hear the facts, and I think that all this always comes down to is the rule of law. I've talked about this in my other videos before, where we're replacing the rule of law with the rule of the mob. Replacing the rule of law with the rule of the mob. The thing that separates America from being a third world country where, you can just have justice in the streets by way of, and all this political corruption, is that we have the rule of law. We have checks and balances. There's a reason why Lady Liberty is blind, right? We all know Lady Liberty balancing the scales of truth and justice. Well, I'm talking about the Statue of Liberty, but Lady Justice, that's what it's called. Sorry, my fault. There's a reason why it's blind. It's blind because it's not supposed to take into account things like, oh, just because you believe all women because she's a woman, you believe all, you believe if they're an old white man, they probably are guilty. Like, no, there's a reason why Lady Justice is blind. The reason why she's blindfolded, and it's because it's not supposed to just, be based off of looks. You take into things like evidence, and you weigh those things. But like I'll finish up on, because this is definitely a ramble, what I wanted to mention is what Mallory Miller talks about is just the degradation of society in general, okay? And she talks about the women of the 50s and the women of the prior generation, like prior to the 50s, before all these women's liberation and before we've seen such aggression and hostility, and really just taking something that's precious, taking the pure essence of the feminine, which we know is, there's balance, there's yin and yang, there's masculine and there's feminine. There's the masculine is more of a, as we know, Father Sky and Mother Earth, more of a, and this is balanced throughout time. This is like throughout other philosophies and religions and native culture. This is not just like an American Western civilization thing. There's balance, there's harmony, the balance of opposites. That's what it's all about. So there was a time whenever women were just proud to be beautiful and elegant. And like I said, Mallory Millett talks about this whenever, her generation of her parents were just proud to be beautiful. And yeah, of course, they were mostly homemakers, and it was a lot of like craziness where they were like hyped up on drugs and speed, and it was all this like proud to be a homemaker stuff. So like I understand that had to be bucked out. You could not just be a homemaker. But a lot of the jobs back then were not really made for women. I mean, most of it was still like industrial revolution. Most jobs were hard. Men and boys were working hard jobs in kind of factories, and it was rough. And they were proud to have a beautiful woman to come home to that was happy to be dolled up for them and happy to look good for their man. And then, of course, now with new age of different careers, yeah, there's plenty of other opportunity for women, and that's fine. But it doesn't mean you have to completely buck femininity. You have to buck what it means to be beautiful, buck what it means to be just elegant. If we look at these women here of a previous generation, and gosh, they were so happy just to look beautiful and look precious and to look, just quality. And then all of a sudden, right now, we've seen that completely turn inside out on its head because, there's nothing really super feminine or beautiful about a lot of these feminist archetypes right now, nothing. And we know who's the most popular right now, based off on millennials, is freaking Billie Eilish. It is an exact abomination to femininity. There's something, I truly believe it's a spirit of Jezebel. It's a spirit of wickedness. That's this gothic kind of like self-degrading, self-depreciating, self-loathing, like I'm ugly and I love it, or I'm not gonna ascribe to your, it's almost like a punk emo times 12, right? In my generation, it was like a punk emo thing where everyone kind of went goth, and there was like the girls that wore like the tight choker necklaces and dressed in black, and they're kind of like cool to not care. They were just like, I don't give a shit about your approval. I don't care about you trying to think I'm pretty because I don't care. But it's funny because now we're seeing an artist like Billie Eilish and how it's literally so many women are so proud to look like this kind of like weird pagan, like, like just non-feminine, boyish, wearing like big baggy pants, wearing big baggy hoodies, not putting any makeup on, wearing beanies, this weird freaking pose where they put their like eyes in like the back of their eyelids, where it's like they look like they're demon possessed. I'm not sure if y'all have seen this, I'm sure you have, but it's kind of the trend where it's like this kind of like, the only way I can express it is like, it's like a, they stick their tongue out and they roll their eyes in the back of their head and they're like, savage. I'm just savage, badass. I don't care about what you think about me. I'm just badass and masculine. So really, this is the times that we're living in, and it's really sad to me that femininity has just gone by the wayside. I mean, it's really sad, and I'm sure this younger generation is so lost because they can't even freaking talk to each other, boys and girls can't have a conversation because there's so many of these attitudes of like, it's just cool not to care. I'm a badass. Um, and I'm not feminine. I'm not going to look pretty for you. I'm not going to be your slave. And it's really freaking sad. It's sad and it's scary. And but it's the trend that we're seeing. So anyways, the purpose of this channel is to say that, there's a freaking greater agenda here. This discrepancy between party affiliation, politics infecting every single aspect of our lives, and common way to relate to people, common way to have conversations, common way to be friends, common way to get into a relationship, to get into marriage. It comes down to population control. Whether there's delayed marriages, now delayed, gonna have children. And really, I just want us to think critically that, this is the trend that we're seeing. So anyways, let me know in the comments what you guys think. Let me know some of your experiences. Share with me some of your stories. What are the boys and girls like your age? What are some of the attitudes you've copped from people, and most of the times unnecessarily? Like, what is the kind of attitude in your circles? How are you disagreeing with the opposite gender, especially over politics right now? Have you seen marriages even separate, relationships separate because of political beliefs and values and convictions? Tell me what you guys think. All right, thanks.